Yeah, so you see Spectre now? Okay, awesome. So yeah, just I guess just show a quick overview. So when the application just launches, this is empty. We just see this. We have this welcome screen, a few instructions. Then the flow is basically just creating a new wallet, a new device. So you can just so the devices can be like any hardware wallet or hot wallet with Bitcoin Core, or basically any hardware wallet you might want to use. Specify a name and say you can either get it over USB or scan a QR code or from a file. Basically, after you add that, then there's this screen of managing the device. So it basically just shows the XPubs of the device, which you can export, I guess, if you want. And then once you have the device, then you can add it as in a wallet. So if you have multiple devices, you can also create it as multi-signature, which is pretty much the same UI. You're selecting between nested SegWit and SegWit addresses, selecting devices for the multisig, a name, and select signers. So let's say 2 out of 3. And here you can just, if you have multiple XPubs which match for multisig derivation, then you can select between them. If you don't, then you can just click Create Wallet. Here it will just select it automatically. You can scan for existing funds. Here just you can scan for either balances or full rescan, which is just slower. Create wallet. We have this little animation screen. The wallet itself, again, pretty simple, I guess. There's the Receive tab, which is the first one shown. You can use it to either generate, get a new address, show like the past addresses, displaying on device. You can label the addresses, so just, I don't know, whatever. Transaction screen, I'll go to one with more transactions. So we have this this transaction screen. You can see the total balance confirmed and waiting confirmation. Here, just transaction list. You can see our UTXOs, edit their labels, so you can manage them. On the send screen, so here it's just the simple. You can scan recipient address, send amount, and you can calculate the fee. Here you have like a lot more options. I guess this is a little disorganized, but here you can select like between more advanced options. So fee management, manual or dynamic, RBF, add another recipient for batch transactions. So this will add another recipient here. You can do this as like a text instead of the UI editor, etc. Here, and minimize that and just get some address and send it.
Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to. So I'm familiar with Spectre. I downloaded it a couple months ago and tried it out too, and I watched some of the videos. I just wanted to ask if everybody else on the call knows what Spectre does. The big picture.
Yes, I have a pretty good idea as well.
Yeah.
I watched the videos and feel like I have a pretty good idea.
Maybe I can put some context here about the UI of Spectre and why it is designed the way it is. So the main focus is obviously multi-signature. And the main audience is like the hodlers that don't trust a single hardware wallet, but instead wants to use multiple hardware wallets and diversify the risks. The idea behind the UI is that you have multiple devices. Each of these devices have private keys. And these private keys, in principle, can be used for either single-sig wallets or multi-sig wallets or whatever else. And the idea is that, Ben, you sure? Maybe I should start sharing the screens then. While
Yeah,
you're
make sure to turn your
Twitter.
screen off instead of sharing your Twitter here for a second. If you want to, then that's fine.
Yeah, so let me just figure out how to share the screen here.
Yeah.
I think it might be, yeah, here, share the screen, share the screen. Okay, now you probably see my screen. Yeah, wonderful. So the idea is that we have multiple devices. For example, I can have cold card, Trezor, Ledger, and so on, and each of them have the keys. And then I combine these keys into different multi-signature setups. For example, I can use my Trezor or my ledger for a single sig key, and I can use the same ledger in the multi-signature quorum for my like really cold storage, for example, like 2 or 3 cold storage. So that's why we have this separation between devices and the wallet. So basically, when you are creating a new device, unfortunately, I don't have hardware wallets next to me. I will pick them up a bit later, maybe. So I will demo it on the hot wallet functionality. When we create a new wallet, in this case, we just write down the mnemonic. In case of any other hardware wallet, we can actually click this get over USB button, and then it will connect to the hardware wallet and get all the keys that you may need for multi-signature and single signature setups. Yeah, so I will go back to Bitcoin Core and just create a new one.
So one question, and if I understand correctly, almost all the functionality is something that Bitcoin Core can do, but it's just all command line and super complex, right?
Yes,
so
this is
like a
the
layer
main
on
idea.
top to make things easier.
So we don't implement any like fancy functionality inside Spectre itself. So we rely on 2 tools. First one is Bitcoin Core itself. So we are creating wallets in Bitcoin Core. We are labeling addresses in Bitcoin Core. We ask Bitcoin Core for PSBT transactions and so on. And then the second tool is HWI. This is a hardware wallet interface that Andrew Chow wrote. That is also a command line tool that allows you to pass these transactions to hardware wallets and ask hardware wallets either to sign or to get the master public keys and so on. So the idea of Spectre is actually to put these 2 tools together and put a reasonably convenient user interface on top of that. Yeah, so for all the hardware wallets, we fetch a bunch of keys, and each of these keys have like different purpose. These are all defined in this BIP standards, and yeah, by default, it gets like the keys that are needed for different types of wallets. That's why there are a few of them. And after that, you already can create a new wallet where you can combine these keys. For example, let's make a multi-signature wallet. Stupid, but 2 of 2. Yeah. Then we select what keys we want to use, and this is what Ben already showed. But I can, in principle, combine these hardware wallets that I have in other wallets as well. So, for example, we use internally, like I use one of my devices for all the wallets I have. For example, one is for my normal spendings and another one for our Spectre donations in 204 multisig, and another one is for my cold storage. Yeah, so this is the logic, and I think from here I will give the word back to Ben so he can continue, or you guys have questions so we can answer.
Yeah, before more details, I was going to ask, how's the user response? What's working for them? What's not working? What type of feedback are you getting overall?
So the hardest part is probably the confusion about different keys. The thing is, when you launch, for example, Trezor wallet or Ledger wallet and connect your hardware wallet there, it is extremely easy to get their different accounts. So I don't know if you guys know about this XPub accounts. But basically you can have multiple master public keys that are kind of completely separated from each other. The problems in the UX of these existing wallets cause problems for the user inspector as well, because often they cannot find funds, for example. Then what else? Some problems of the UX that we have is that Spectre sometimes is pretty slow. It's more like a backend thing, because we do plenty of RPC calls to Bitcoin Core to fetch the data. So hopefully we will solve that. Generally the configuration of the Bitcoin Core itself. So we have this settings tab, where you can configure how you connect to Bitcoin Core. And ideally, it should work pretty easily just with the defaults of to detect. So you see that I have almost everything just set to default, and then it just works. Okay, so now it's swapped to the mainnet. Yeah, this is one of the things that we probably want to change, is how you configure to what node you're connecting. So like testnet, mainnet, and regtest. But things become more complicated if the person has a Bitcoin Core running somewhere else, especially over Tor, and they are trying to connect their from Spectre on their computer. Also we have such a non-trivial thing when you have a node in the box like Raspberry Pi, like Umbro, or Raspberry Blitz, or MyNode, where you have a Spectre installed, and then in order to communicate to your hardware wallets, you need to either connect your hardware wallet to this node in the box itself, or you need to run a separate instance of Spectre on your desktop to provide this communication to the USB wallet connected to your computer. So this is kind of confusing. Otherwise, I don't think, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so give me a minute. I will go upstairs and take the hardware wallet so I can demo what exactly I mean, and maybe meanwhile Ben can.
You can use this Spectre DIY simulator. I guess it would be also much faster.
Not on this computer. I broke the build here. Sorry. Just give me a minute.
We could also start with, just giving you some of the feedback we might have seen from the videos, or our kind of early thoughts. Christoph, I know you spent some time with it. Do you wanna start?
Yeah, I do have a few things here. I'm going to put it in the background of my video here. Can you see the Figma background here? You'd have to stop sharing. But you see there, that's some general feedback. My overall feedback is just there's a lot going on, and I'm not really sure what to do when I open the application. And I'm also as a non-hardcore user, I mean, there's a lot of me to figure out, and I don't really know, like derivation, path, XPub, fingerprint, like you're throwing a lot of things at me right away. I'm not entirely sure what to do with them. So if you scroll down a little bit, I mocked up here some like here on the left here on the screen here. That's more something like when you start the application, you can almost show nothing, right? you can't even create a wallet because you have no devices. Like, you can get rid of almost everything and just focus the people on adding a device, adding a second device. And then once you have a device, then you can give them the option. Okay, now you can create a wallet, just to keep things a little bit more focused. And then like when you're adding a device or so, I would split things up into many small individual screens where you're just doing one thing at a time, basically, kind of like what mobile apps do a lot, and provide guidance for every single screen, like explain all the different terms, put things, and also when here in this one here that I'm hovering my cursor over there, and you can get rid. You don't need the navigation. You don't need anything else. Just keep people focused on one thing or the other. Something I mentioned at the top, like when you view example, and that's also something I saw, a list of keys. It'd be great if there was an explanation of I could label, like, this is what my current key does, or this is why I added it, just so once I get back to things, I can remember, what they were. And if those examples here are also labeled, and then make sure to give people a reason to celebrate when they did something well. So that was my main feedback, just allow people usually to focus on one thing at a time. And for every little thing that they do, provide a lot of, provide specific help. And then I think you mentioned it earlier too, you mentioned that people have a hard time figuring out, which XPub or whatever they use. And maybe that's something when you allow them to add proper labels here and proper explanations and descriptions in this process, maybe they can set themselves some reminders for future uses. Yeah, so that was my main thing. Like, for me as a newbie who doesn't spend all day with the intricate details of the technicals of how this works, I appreciate this kind of step-by-step focused process.
So I have a question regarding like the flow. So basically, would it make, so I see two ways how the person can step-by-step set up the multi-signature wallet. Either he starts creating a wallet and then adds one device after another, or choosing already existing ones, or he starts by creating devices and then switches to creating the wallet. But I feel like the second type is more like two-step process, and like if you start right away by creating the multi-signature wallet or single signature wallet, then it's more straightforward. But I'm not sure. So what do you think, guys?
I have some, I can follow up from Christoph with my sort of feedback that I gathered from the videos as well. And I think the main one is pretty similar to Christoph's in that it's a very rich application, right? Because you have so much functionality from Bitcoin Core. I would consider myself knowledgeable, but not an expert by any chance. For example, I don't run my own node. So I probably fall outside of, your target audience here mostly, although I'm kind of on the edge. I would like to see myself as a kind of potential Spectre user. But the sort of main feedback I have is, if you have a clear idea of your target audience, which it does seem like you do, it's people that probably own hardware wallets, probably run their own node. But maybe they don't, maybe they haven't taken the step to multi-sig. And it seems like you could be a really, really good choice for those people. And I would, urge you to think about how can you simplify all of these advanced features you have for those people. And it goes along Christoph's feedback as well to reduce kind of what each screen is trying to do. So, and you mentioned there are two different paths to set up a multi-sig wallet. Maybe you could provide those different paths. So you have like two entry points on the main screen, but nothing else. And then sort of along the path, just try and think about every screen. What also are your kind of recommended options? Because there are so many options, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to know. But for example, is there a good reason not to use a native SegWit set up today if you're trying to set up a new one, those kind of things, right? At the moment, everything is on the table and it appears equal, while in fact, you might know and you might feel strongly that people should be using a particular option as the kind of default. If you feel that way about some things, you can try and, not necessarily hide, but like de-emphasize some of the non-recommended options. Or, for example, when you showed in the video all the different keys that an external wallet might have, I was confused, right? First there was a test network keys, then there was the main network keys, and there was single SegWit, single nested SegWit. There was like 4 of them for each device. That was very confusing to me. Maybe you could have an opinion there that like, okay, it's a multi-sig setup we're doing, so the native SegWit one is probably the one, right? And then maybe the other ones appear in a kind of more advanced options one, I think. I don't know, that was just a general thought, like throughout the flow, throughout the application, are there things, can you create hierarchies in both the kind of actions you expect people to take on each screen and also the kind of all the different options and settings? Can you kind of narrow the number of things that people need to kind of process as they go through it? Yeah, that was the main one. The second one was a bit more on the kind of UI, like not so much the flow, but like on each screen. They are rich with information. And again, like I was wondering if you could go through it and think about the hierarchy again. There was, for example, there's a screen with transactions, receiving, sending, and settings, all kind of in the same UI element, while they're actually kind of different, right? Like some are actions you might do more frequently. One is kind of settings that it's important, but it's not something that's of the same kind of type. So again, combing through the screens and kind of separating out, creating a slightly stronger hierarchy of what elements are the most important, give those prominence, which elements are kind of less important and less frequently used, maybe treat them differently, those sort of things. Another question I had more was like, it's really nice to see that you have kind of, if you own a Coldcard, it's actually listed and like, oh, cool. It's like, that's what I have. And there's a lot of them. But then on the other hand, I was wondering, like, is that because they actually have technical differences that need handling? Or is it more because it feels nice? And that, my knowledge doesn't stretch that far. But it was just a thought, like, does that mean that if I own a hardware wallet that's not listed, it's not supported at all? Or is there kind of a general
Yes, it is probably the case. So basically the hardware wallets that we support at the moment all behave slightly differently. So all USB wallets are pretty much the same with some insignificant differences. For example, Trezor also supports this toggle passphrase functionality, and for Coldcard you have an additional method to use SD card to sign the transaction. So basically, depending on the hardware wallet you are using in the wallet, you will have slightly different options how to sign. For example, with Coldcard you can either use USB for signing, or you can download a file in the Coldcard format and then transfer it to the Coldcard with SD card. With Koba wallet, for example, you have an option, and Spectre DIY, you have an option to scan the QR code with the transaction. And again, Electrum, Spectre DIY, and Koba are all using different formats for these QR codes.
It was more a reflection on the whole ecosystem, that it's already quite complex, and there's a risk of it getting pretty complicated for product makers like yourself, but also for users, right? Like, do we expect in the future that every single device has its own kind of listing, or is there a way of kind of pushing the community a bit more towards some form of standardization? You said like USB devices behave similarly, is there kind of groups that we could maybe put them in? This is
yeah.
outside of this discussion, but it's just something that struck me, like, wow, this is complicated.
Yeah, so I think that first on this device screen, we definitely can simplify that by suggesting the user first to choose the type of the device. For example, USB wallet, and then we can directly start communicating over USB. Or you say, okay, this is the code card, so it suggests you to select the file. Or it is something custom, and then it presents you this text field. Because at the moment, yes, it is a mess, because if you are using Trezor or code cards, there is no sense to display the scan QR code functionality. So this definitely can be separated into screens, conditional screens, depending on the device type. Yeah.
Cool, but I mean, overall, I also want to give you a huge props, because you know, the general layout of the screen with a sidebar, with the wallets and the devices, you know, it's super clear to me, and you know, it's so much easier than Bitcoin Core. So you know, I don't want to kind of gloss over all the progress you've made. It is very much simpler, but we're also here to kind of give you feedback on where could you go next. But
yes,
good work.
Thank you.
We also, maybe I should share just on the screen for just another time. So we also started this with this wizard thing, which might be better than this than the adding device screen. So here you can have you can first choose the device. So let's say I have a Spectre DIY connected. So here I can choose specifically the options already. So either QR code or USB. Here it just detected it, so it directly got the keys and direct me to set up a wallet. Here I know it's probably not designed very well, but yeah, here you can just say the wallet name. I don't know. Select between those.
Is there a good reason today to use nested SegWit?
I guess if you're using like some service which doesn't support SegWit, I'm not sure if there are anymore. Like a year ago maybe, but now anyone has an idea?
So I think Strike is supporting only nested SegWit. It is the Lightning service from I think that sends you money as soon as you receive certain amount of Lightning payments. And another reason to use nested SegWit might be because, as far as I can tell, more people are using nested SegWit. So if you care about your privacy and how easy it is to track you down, then using nested SegWit puts you into a larger crowd comparing to native SegWit. Yes, but otherwise, if you care about fees and how much you spend on the fees, then it's better to use native SegWit. Yeah, so it's a trade-off. It's everywhere. Yeah, so this wizard basically only covers the single signature wallets at the moment. So you can set up the device and the wallet at the same time and add up with a single signature wallet, but you don't have this kind of wizard for multi-sig, unfortunately, yet. Maybe we will adapt it.
Yeah, maybe was just sharing for like your opinion on that direction. Maybe it's better, maybe not.
I'm all for those wizards. Much easier, one thing at a time.
Yeah,
and the one thing at a time thing is also helpful, because then you can have a tree of different options, which is much better to do than when you have just one form to fill out. You can just, based on the choice the user makes, you can adjust what you show next and what you hide. So that's why I think a lot of times you also avoid, or in design you avoid this kind of linear flow at the top, because you don't really know how many steps there will be, because that really depends on the choices you just make. Yeah, but I'm a big fan of that.
Something that I would also comment on, and by the way, yeah, great job, guys. Yeah, it's a really cool application. something I would comment on is as you were going through the demo, you put like a 2 of 2 multi-sig, and you said that it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Now, for some more like novice users, I guess the question is like, how can we help like more novice users figure out what are the trade-offs of the different M schemes? So I think Casa does like these really cool like visualizations of like like 2 of 5 or 3 of 5 and stuff like that. Maybe that's something we could integrate into that. The other thing is at the end of the multi-sig creation, like what's the next step from there? And I'm not sure how you guys have implemented it, but maybe yeah, the next step could be like, well, this is what you have to do to fund the wallet. Here's the QR code or something like this. So that's the 2 comments I have.
So after you set up the multi-signature wallet or single signature, you go to the receive tab of this wallet. So you instantly get the first receiving address to fund the address. But we were discussing recently that for multi-signature, it is actually extremely important to back up your configuration, because even if you lose one of the keys, let's say you use 2 or 3, but you lose one of the keys, you cannot recover your wallet without knowledge of this XPub, at least. So it is very important to back up it somehow. So we were discussing maybe we should add a separate screen for the multisig wizard, where we offer the user to download something like a PDF or a backup file with all the information about this wallet. Yeah, so here it is also a UX question. So like, what is the best way? Either it is a PDF, or we can just do a binary or JSON file that the person should store somewhere, or a text file, and how exactly to format it. Yeah, so that's also the question.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, that's a great point with the backup and like what to do with it. I think there's this Photon library that does this cloud backup. I'm pretty sure it's not the best recommended maybe by you guys to like back up these XPubs and stuff in the cloud, but maybe it could be like a nice way for users to
I think that users probably use some kind of cloud service for syncing, like Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever else. So at least we can offer, like, make an instruction that, okay, now download this PDF file and store it in your cloud storage. It's only public information. So even if it is known by the attacker, he will know only how much funds you have, not like any private keys or anything. And then to recover from this backup, PDFs are very tricky from the backend side. So we cannot just upload the PDF to Spectre and Spectre will magically recover the wallet from it, because PDF is way too complicated. But what we can probably do is, for example, to include a QR code in this PDF that can be scanned by Spectre and recreate the wallet from this QR code. And it's kind of aligned with how often we use QR codes in Bitcoin community.
There's too many QR codes. Daniel, please.
I would strongly recommend you adding a step to talk about backup of the public keys, because I think the perception of multi-sig is that it's just more secure and you don't need to do anything else. But a lot of people miss this. I mean, that's not true, obviously, but a lot of people miss the fact that, like, you might actually have increased your risk of loss from negligence, because, like, you now have 3 things or more that you need to keep safe or backed up or have a way of rotating out. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth that step in the guide or the flow. You could give people different options. That's fine, but you at least need to give them the information that, hey, cool, you've set up the multisig, but you really need to think about how you get back from like a catastrophic scenario, or just at least the minimum of backing up the things you need. So yeah, I strongly recommend that.
That's an interesting and tricky thing sometimes to decide if your product should be a toolbox where users can do whatever they want, that there are just a lot of different tools, but they need to know how to use them and what they want to build with them, versus kind of a more of a protocol where you put them on a very specific path that's very likely to get them a very good outcome. But then some advanced users, they might not be so happy because they're doing like something super custom with some 10-year-old Electron or whatever, So that's an interesting balance sometimes. That's maybe difficult to decide on with these things.
Yeah, so we have, yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have some thoughts on this. Maybe, you have this wizard where you have the navigation, or where you can show the navigation and the wizard. Maybe you can add sort of this thing where right off the bat you can say, I'm new to multisig, and then you can click on that, or advanced. I'm an advanced user, and be that the choice. And then if you go through like, I'm new to multisig, maybe for that one, you can choose what you think is the best option for people to start with. So you can have create a device or create a wallet, and choose one of those for the people. Maybe have a smaller kind of a link that says create the other option that you think may be less likely for people to use. And if you're an advanced user, maybe you can have both options there already, or that kind of a thing, in that kind of thinking. And let me see, I took a couple of notes. Okay. Steps entry. Yeah. Step-by-step wizard. And so you can have sort of now you mentioned something about connecting, like some steps being complex even for advanced users. So if you have the Bitcoin Core thing, like the connecting to Bitcoin Core, and there's some people who experience certain problems, and you already know of this, and you may be able to help people, maybe there should be a little troubleshooting button that can guide you to different options that people could do. Let's see. Now you have like the SegWit versus the nested SegWit part of it that you were speaking of, and you said that SegWit was good for fees and the other one was good for privacy. Maybe there's a way that you could add that there, like a little tooltip or something. I can say, hey, this is better for fees versus this is better for privacy. Then people have a better idea of what to choose, because most of the time, even if you know more about Bitcoin, a lot of these things will feel complex. And maybe that will be a way for to guide people a little bit easier. And as far as the backup, I agree with Daniel, and I agree with this, what he was saying about having sort of choosing certain things that are stronger, and then having the other options in case people want different things. But in case of the backup, maybe that could also be like a backup reminder, or reminder of certain things, like, hey, you haven't made your backup, and there's a highlighted section of that thing in some way that kind of lets you know that you're supposed to do something else after you begin the entire process. And maybe it's a way that you can sort of add certain things and certain levels that people can start learning about things. And just by, I don't know how to explain it, but I think one of the biggest things about Bitcoin is that at first you know very little, and then there's so much to learn, and there's so many options, that there has to be some kind of a way for people to learn through the process. And it's not something that happens overnight. So maybe you'll discover some unique ways of letting people know what is the next thing that they should learn, how to do. And maybe you can use your Ghost or your Spectre for it. And even in the steps that you have out there, I know you've added the little kind of the Spectre. Maybe if it's multiple steps, you can have the little Spectre walk. I don't know. It's a silly idea, but you can incorporate things like that too. So overall, I think you have a very complex product, but that is a good thing. And you need to think of ways to make people understand it a little bit better, make it a bit simpler. But I think you must have a lot of knowledge about Bitcoin and everything that goes into it. So you'll be able to select the best things. You have to select the best things for people to know, and what are their best options, because we don't know. We don't know everything about Bitcoin. We'll never know everything about Bitcoin, but you can help guide people. And that'll be an interesting process. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for the ideas. Just one small comment. So yeah, what I think might be the maybe optimal way to do it is that in the beginning of the wizard, you have a checkbox. I'm an advanced user. I can go very deep into the configuration. So like in the normal, like in the normal installations, installers. So if you don't check it, then you have all the defaults that we decided are good. And if you do this checkbox, then you have all the options and a bunch of information tooltips explaining each of the options. So basically, your setup becomes much more complicated. We still probably will use the pre-selected options there, but they will be more or less equivalent or available, but only if you check this "I'm super advanced" checkbox. Yeah, maybe something like that.
Danger zone.
Yeah, danger zone. Danger zone sounds good. Yeah.
I had a different question. So right now you basically, to run this, you need to know how GitHub and the terminal works and spin it up as a local server, right? I was wondering if you have plans to turn this into a desktop app or something like that, or if it will stay something that you locally run.
It is already a desktop app.
Oh, it is?
I mean, it includes, so in the releases, you can download the binary that you just run. So at the moment, the way how you can run Spectre is you download and start Bitcoin Core Qt, Bitcoin Core Qt, so the GUI thing. And then you start the app that we also have in releases. And yeah, there is a tweak. You actually need to edit bitcoin.conf file. That's the hardest part, probably. So ideally, one thing that we could do is, if we see that Bitcoin Core is running but not connectable, you can click the button, "Please edit Bitcoin Core configuration file for me." And then it starts working right away. Another approach that I was thinking of, but I don't really like it, is to have a Bitcoin Core included in the package. So if you don't have your own Bitcoin Core, we can run one for you. But it's tricky because we are focusing on paranoics, and paranoics like to download and verify signatures and make sure they downloading from Bitcoin Core website, not from some shady github.com. Yeah, so that part became much better with binaries, but still have some sharp edges. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that tip. Just downloaded the desktop app.
Yeah, I don't know about adding the Bitcoin, the node to the software, especially if we do have an audience that will probably have it or will want to download it on their own. And if it complicates things too much for you too, you're focused on all these things, and then you're going to add one extra thing that you have to worry about, and the new releases and all these things. I don't know how they work in the background, but maybe you can set up some sort of way to guide people to how they could do it, or to send them to some kind of a resource instead of putting it out there or adding it to the package. At least that's my thinking.
Another question I have for you guys. So basically, at the moment, we have a link to frequently asked questions that we have on our GitHub repository on one place on the beginning page. But Do you think it is a good approach when you include the documentation in the product, or better to have a separate website where you can look up things and from the software you forward people to that website?
I don't know. I think it's a bit about balance. Well, I think it's a bit about balance. You need to figure out some things that may be simple enough for people to have within the interface, and then, but other stuff you could guide them to other pages. What were you thinking about, Connor?
I guess we should wrap up very soon and say thank you to everybody. But I have one very small, almost comedic feedback to end on, which is in one of the videos. I watched the Bitcoin logo was green, and I was like wondering what's going on here. Why is it green? I don't know. Is it Bitcoin Cash? No, can't be. So of course I know it's not that, and I figured it out that it was different networks and yada yada. But it was just like a very small thing that had me fooled for a second. That might not be obvious to people why that changes colors and stuff.
I wanted to ask also something before wrapping up. Sorry, Connor, I know you're about to. So, and I wanted to.
We never give up.
Okay. So how can we be helpful in the future, I guess? Because we just had this session here. Hopefully it was useful. Maybe you never want to hear from us or me, whatever, again, which is fine. If you want to, then, what's a good way to continue this?
Well, so I think that we should, now we have a good chance with Ben to sit down and actually next to each other, draw maybe a few screens and figure out how we want to change the UI. And it would be very helpful if we can get your feedback. Let's say probably the best for us would be to open an issue in our repository with the screens that we are thinking of and ask for the feedback. And we can send this link to the group, to the chat, and maybe you guys can comment how we can change it, because basically this will require some programming, and before going there, we first will draw something. Yeah. And another really important thing that we didn't really talk about is mobile, like responsive stuff. So because we designed it at first for desktop, and people tend to watch their funds and see transactions on the go as well, especially if they have the node running, they can actually access Spectre from their phone. And the UI there looks worse. So I think the best would be if we draw something and then you guys give us feedback, and we also incorporate all the comments that you made. And thank you very much for all the feedback that you gave. It's really, really important for us. Yeah.
Do you have
live feedback from the Slack channel, by the way, which Tancred wrote a comment saying, "I hope coordinators like Electrum and Spectre develop a standard BIP for multi-sig wallet export and import. Sounds awesome to me." Is that something you might consider?
So you guys know about Christopher Allen and Blockchain Commons. So this guy really loves to standardize stuff. I think he was one of the authors of some of the early internet standards. I don't remember what exactly, like the first version.
TLS, I think.
TLS. And now he's working on Bitcoin, and especially focusing on this QR codes and standards for communication between different wallets. So there are a few emerging standards from him and his group, and I know that Sparrow and Fully Noded and maybe a few others are seriously considering using these standards. And we can also join this kind of group, and we are trying to catch up with them. And then hopefully there will be a standard. And I think they want to make some kind of BIP or something for this wallet import-export format as well as others. Yeah, so we have a hope. Yeah, now it's like a complete disaster. Everybody is using something different.
That's how it always begins.